G'day lads, learn how to use FIFA ratings to simulate and predict the Women's World Cup on Microsoft Excel. If you want downloadable access to this file and an exclusive community of Excel sports modelers, click the first link in the description below to be taken to the Excel Lads Patreon page. Let's get started. So the first step, lads, is to collect every country and their FIFA rating in columns A and B of worksheet FIFA ratings here. So in A1, type in the text teams, and then from A2 to A17, we're going to list the teams playing in the tournament. So that's Switzerland, Spain, Netherlands, South Africa, all the way through to the last team, and then I'll type them in really quickly now. Japan, Norway, Sweden, the US, England, Nigeria, and scroll down to the bottom of the screen there. Denmark, France, through to Morocco. Now in B1, you're going to write in FIFA rating. Below this, we're going to list the team's FIFA rating, and that can be found on the FIFA Women's Ranking website. It'll look something like this on the Inside FIFA webpage. And now we have to match up Switzerland to their respective rating, and we can do that manually by just scrolling down to Switzerland in spot 20. We can see their rating is 1765.9. Now, this process is the same for every single team. Spain is 2002.28. They're ranked 6th in the world. Same thing for Netherlands. They're at 1980. Now, South Africa aren't actually in the top 50 teams. So what you can do is come over to a specific federation. We'll go to the African Federation, and we can see South Africa has a rating of 1471.52. All right, do this for the rest of the teams. Japan, Norway, Sweden, and the United States, as well as England, are the stronger teams in the tournament. Round of 16, 2023 Women's World Cup knockout stages, while Morocco is actually the weakest listed team with a rating of 1334.08. So they'll find it really hard to progress through to the next stage while versing teams such as France. Now let's go back into Excel, and we're going to name the ranges. So from A2 to A17, select these. Name this range in the top left-hand box teams. Do the same thing for B2 to B17, but we'll name these ratings. We'll use these named ranges later on in our formulas for finding the win percentages for each team in the knockout stage. Create a new worksheet and title it Knockout Rounds. Here we're going to have our tournament bracket and simulate a single World Cup. From B3 to C4, create a box with outside borders, and then highlight B3 to C3, where you're going to put a bottom border and come up with a box looking like this. So it's split up into two sections, B3 to C3 and B4 to C4. Now we're going to copy this, leaving gaps of 2 rows in between. So the last box in the B column is at B15. Do the same thing in the E and F column, the H and I column, the K and L column, the N and O column, and the same thing on the right. And these boxes represent games in our tournament. So on the left and right hand sides, we start with the round of 16, and then teams progress through to the quarterfinals, the semifinals, and finally the World Cup final in columns K and L. This bracket, you can see, is pretty clear when we zoom out. Highlight or select the whole worksheet now and drag the row down to 50 pixels in height. That'll make each box a bit bigger and more readable in our knockout rounds worksheet. Now in column B, I want you to drag the width of the cell out and do the same thing for E, H, K, N, Q, and T. This will give us more space to include the team or nation name in these boxes. Highlight the whole worksheet and change the text size to 18. I also want to center the text in the cells. Then merge and center the cells B1 to C1, add a bottom border, change the text size to 24, and here I'm going to write the title Round of 16 in bold. And basically the games below this will be on the round of 16 left-hand side of the bracket. Copy this in columns E and F, H and I, K, L, N, O, all the way to the right. obviously all of these are not the round of 16. In columns E and F, it'll be the quarterfinals. In H and I, it'll be the semifinals. In K and L, it'll be the World Cup final. And then do the same thing for column N and O, semifinals and quarterfinals. Next, we need to come up with a winner of the World Cup final, and we're going to put this team in cells K4 to L4, and we'll put this in text size 24 bold, add a big outside border, and merge and center these cells so the team can be displayed quite clearly. And so lads, now what we have to do is come up with a list of teams to select in the round of 16 matches on the left hand side here. So cells B3 to B4 will be the teams, and then C3 to C4 will be their win probability. So I want you to highlight every single left hand side of the round of 16 boxes here in columns B and T. Then go up into the data tab up here. Click on this icon, data validation. And then we're going to allow list. And our source for that list will be the named range equals teams. Okay. And if we scroll over to cell B3 for our first round of 16 match, we can select a team to play, and that'll be Switzerland, and the first matchup is Switzerland versus Spain. Fill this in for the rest of the round of 16 matches. So we've got the Netherlands versus South Africa, Japan versus Norway, Sweden versus the United States, England versus Nigeria, and for the final few round of 16 matches, it's Colombia versus Jamaica, Australia versus Denmark, and then France versus Morocco. Now, of course, the next step is being able to come up with a win probability for Switzerland and Spain respectively, so we can see how often Switzerland will move through to the next round in the simulations. So that formula is going to be equals 1 divided by bracket 1 plus 10 to the power of open bracket and negative 2 open brackets, and we're going to use an XLOOKUP function. XLOOKUP open bracket, our lookup value is the team in B3, comma, we're looking them up in teams and then returning their FIFA ratings. Close bracket minus XLOOKUP open bracket, this time it's going to be the opposition in B4, comma, teams, comma, ratings, so we're returning their FIFA rating. Close bracket twice, divided by 200, close bracket, divide by 2 again, close bracket twice, and we get 0.2041. Converting it to a decimal, we get 20.4%. And to work out Spain's win percentage, just put 1 there, implying 100%. So Spain's realistic chance of winning or progressing to the next round will be 1 minus 20.4%, which is 79.6%. Now copy and paste cells C3 to C4 into the remaining round of 16 matches on the left and right hand sides of the bracket. So France and Morocco, pretty uneven matchup there. France with a 98% chance of winning. And our next task is to determine who progresses to the next round, Switzerland or Spain. And the only way we can do that is by simulating the results of Spain and Switzerland based on the win probability. So the formula to do that is equals index open bracket, our array is B3 to B4 or both teams, comma, count if our range is C3, the first win percentage, and then you're going to do speech mark less than or equal to speech mark and the RAND function, RAND, open bracket, close bracket, plus 1, close bracket. And then for this simulation, we get Spain. Drag that down. And so for the second round of 16 match, we want to include the cells B7 and B8 and the win percentage C7. So this is a simulation. So every time we refresh the cells, new teams will come up, right? Because that RAND function simulates the games. And of course, according to the simulation, Spain will approximately win 80% of the time and the Netherlands will win 95% of the time. Now what we have to do is do this for every quarterfinal matchup. So copy and paste cells E5 to E6 into cells E13 to E14, and we can confirm that the ranges are correct. Copy and paste E13 to E14 into this Q5 cell, but we see we get the 00 here, so we need to fix up the arrays, T3 to T4, and then of course England's win percentage. Do the same thing for the opposing team. We're finding the winner of Colombia and Jamaica according to the win probabilities that are simulated. And if we press backspace, these change. Copy and paste this into cells Q13. And for this matchup, we get Denmark and France progressing through to the next round. And if we simulate again, it's Australia and France. Now, of course, we need to find the win probabilities of these matches. So just copy and paste cells C3 to C4 into the quarterfinal matchups. Now, we just have to complete this process for the semifinals and the final to eventually find the winner of our single simulated World Cup. So it's just a process of changing the ranges with the winning team that progresses through to the next stage. However, with the win probabilities, they're all formatted the same. So when you copy and paste them in, F5 to F6, it updates accordingly so that Spain and Japan have a probability distribution according to their FIFA ratings. Do the same thing to find the winner of England and Jamaica, as well as the winner of Denmark and France. And once you've done that, add the corresponding win probabilities in there. And so these simulations lead up to the World Cup final, in which we can find the winner of the Netherlands and Sweden to verse the winner of England and France in this particular simulation, or it's just the winner of each bracket or each side of the bracket. Now, to find the overall winner of the World Cup, we're going to write the formula again in cell K4 equals index open bracket. We're finding in the array K9 to K10, count if function, our range is L9, and our criteria is speech mark less than or equal to, and the rand function, open bracket, close bracket, +1, close bracket, and for this simulation, England have won the tournament versus the United States in the final of the World Cup. And lads, we can run numerous simulations of the World Cup by pressing backspace on a particular cell or refreshing the entire worksheet. But next, I want to make this a bit more visually appealing, so I'm going to select cells B3 to B4, go into conditional formatting, highlight cells rules, and then equal to. So I'm going to highlight the winning team with green fill, and that's going to be represented by whatever team's in E5, so whatever team progresses out of Switzerland and Spain. And of course here it's Spain, so Spain will of course be highlighted in green. If we refresh the simulations, when Switzerland eventually get to the next stage, they are highlighted. So I'm going to do the same thing for B7 to B8 using green fill, and of course this time it'll be equal to E6, so the winner of Netherlands and South Africa move on there. And I'll quickly do the rest of the games in the knockout tournament now, from the round of 16 all the way through to the final. It's the same process for every single game, except of course we're making the equal to cell slightly different. When we come to the final though, I'm going to change the highlight cells rule just slightly. So instead of highlighting with a green fill with dark green text, I'm going to go into a customized format, and the background color will be gold. Gold representing, of course, the winner of the entire World Cup. Select OK, press OK, and of course, we need to import the cell K4. We want to find the winner. So here, England have won, so they are highlighted in gold, and I'll highlight them in gold up here too in cell K4. And once you've done that, lads, we've completed the entire knockout rounds worksheet in this Excel file. So you can zoom out and see the progress from the round of 16 to the final. And by, again, pressing backspace on a particular cell or refreshing the worksheet itself, as I mentioned earlier, you can run multiple simulations of the Women's World Cup. Now, this is all well and good, but it only allows us to run one simulation at a time. So what we're going to do is create a new worksheet and name it Simulations. In here, we're going to run 1,000 of these knockout rounds or tournaments in one shot. So go over to B2, and what we're going to do is paste the teams horizontally by the formula equals transpose, open bracket, and then teams, close bracket, and our 16 teams advancing to the knockout stages in the 2023 Women's World Cup will appear from B2 to Q2. In A3, type in the text trials. Now, we're doing 1,000 trials, so you can type in 1, 2, 3 and drag it down to 1,000. For me, I'm using the most recent version of Excel, so I'm going to use the equals sequence, open bracket, 1,000, close bracket function. That'll spill numbers from 1 to 1,000. And in B3, I'm going to use a formula, a COUNTIF function, to work out how many times Switzerland appear in the knockout rounds. If they appear once, they've only made it to the round of 16, obviously. If they've appeared 5 times, they've won the tournament. So our range is knockout rounds B3 to U16. Make sure to absolute reference that by putting $ in front of both the row and columns. And the criteria is going to be B $2. And the $ basically locks the row so that when we drag it across for Spain, Netherlands, all the way to Morocco and cell Q2, it remains accurate for the array and the ranges in the knockout rounds worksheet. And here Switzerland didn't progress past the round of 16, so that figure of 1 is right. We can see the United States have a figure of 5, meaning we can double check they should have won. Yep, that's correct. This basically says the United States appears 5 times in that B3 to U16 range. So now what we have to do is highlight cells A3 all the way to Q1003. Go into the Data tab, go into What If Analysis over on the right here, select the drop down, and then select Data Table. Skip the row input cell. For the column input cell, just put a random one that we're not using or is not selected. And when we scroll down, it may take a while to load, but we've got 1,000 simulations of the knockout stages of the Women's World Cup here. So if we look at Morocco, for example, they have it pretty tough. They're versing France in the first round, so they don't progress that often, but heavyweights such as the US and England progress quite easily throughout the rounds. And lads, for the final worksheet we need to create, it's going to be called Analysis, and in here we'll be analyzing the simulations we just performed. So go back into the Home tab, and in A1 we need to write the column header team, and here will be our list of nations. And then from B1 to F1 we're going to type in the different stages of the knockout rounds. So the round of 16, the quarterfinals, the semifinals, the final, and then eventually the final winner, or the winner in general. Now, what we're going to do in this table here is grab the list of teams in column A, and then from columns B all the way to F, find that team's percentage chance of finishing up in that stage of the tournament. So their percentage chance of being eliminated in the round of 16, the quarterfinals, the semifinals, the final, and eventually their probability of winning the entire tournament. So in cell A2, type in equals teams. That's going to spill the list of nations. And for cell B2, we want to find Switzerland's probability of being eliminated in the round of 16 equals COUNTIF, open bracket, index function, open bracket. Our array is going to be simulations. So in the simulations worksheet, B4 all the way to Q 100,000. So it's going to be 100,000 in case we decide to include more simulations, because of course we can always do more than 1,000 simulations to make the model more accurate, comma, the row number is 0, comma, and the column number is going to be a match function. So match, open bracket, the lookup value, well, that's of course going to be A2, Switzerland. The lookup array, make sure you absolute reference the column A in the lookup value. So the lookup array will be simulations B2 to Q2. It's coming up as B2 hash on my Excel because I've got the Office package, comma, match type 0. Close the bracket again, comma, and the criteria for the COUNTIF function is 1, because of course a team only comes up once if they've been eliminated in the round of 16. Divide by 1,000 trials, and Switzerland have a probability of 0.803 of being eliminated in the round of 16, which is very close to their real probability. Now remember, it won't be the exact probability, as we're only doing 1,000 simulations. If we did say 1,000,000, then it would align more closely. For the quarterfinals, we've got to change this criteria to 2, for the semifinals 3, and then obviously for the final and the winner, it's going to be 4 and 5. As we said earlier, when the United States win the whole Women's World Cup, they appear 5 times in that simulations worksheet. So this whole sum from B2 to F2 should equal 1, as it is a list of every possible outcome a team can have. Drag this down to Morocco, convert to percentages. Then we're going to go into color scales in conditional formatting so that a team's higher likelihood of, say, finishing in the round of 16 or winning is highlighted in green, whereas the lesser probabilities are highlighted in red. So France, Sweden, United States, and England are the heavyweights in this tournament. Spain and Netherlands close behind. And Morocco, they're very unlikely. In fact, there was not a single simulation in the model where Morocco won the tournament. And now we're done, lads. So you can zoom in, play around with this analysis. But if you want downloadable access to this file, then click the first link in the description below to go to the Excel Lads Patreon page, where you can have access to a community of Excel sports modelers along with every single Excel Lads file.